the public access. Action items. First, we have approval of the summary minutes for the meeting of February 16. We have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? Minutes approved. MDX procurement. We might be done by the time she gets here. Maybe not. MDX procurement contract. Is someone going to present this?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Do you want to read it into the record?
Yeah.
MDX procurement contract number IATB 17-04, MDX project service, title Maintenance of Traffic Service Systems Wide, $1,650,000. It's a limiting amount. Approval to advertise.
Juan Toledo's going to present the item.
Good morning, committee members. The approval to advertising before you is for miscellaneous maintenance of traffic services for system-wide periodic maintenance and repairs of toll and ITS equipment and infrastructure. Today we have our in-house field techs, and we also assist with certain responsibilities for our toll vendors whenever they have to go out and do periodic maintenance on the toll lanes or with the ITS, DMS structures, the dynamic message signs. So this contract is for us to be able to assist with the necessary lane closures that are necessary to do the periodic maintenance on these facilities. Right now we're requesting a 3-year contract with a cap of $550,000 a year, so an upper limiting amount of 1.65 for the 3-year period with 2 optional single-year renewals. We are recommending a 0% small business and 0% local business participation for these contracts, and that's primarily based on availability of contractors under these categories to be able to meet the requirements of this program. The funding for this contract will come out of our annual operating budget for each fiscal year, and that will be covered under the ITS and the toll ops budgets.
Do we have a motion to advertise?
I'll move it for discussion.
And a second? Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question. Is this a single source? In other words, do we have more than one provider, or did I miss when you said that?
Basically, what we did an analysis on this, and it'll be a competition bid. What we've done is that we've looked at the different possible vendors that are out there.
I'm sorry. Let me just clarify my question. My question is this a contract for one provider, or do we have other providers that provide the same services for MDX?
This will be a contract for one MOT contractor to do these services.
And assuming that's awarded, I'm just thinking, like, for example, in the engineering, that we have an A and a B. Do we have that structure for this type of service, or is this just that one?
No, this will be one for the services.
That's my question. Thank you.
Okay.
I also have a question with respect to the recommendation of 0% small and local business participation. Are we going to encourage in the response or provide any type of incentives or credits if a firm provides local or small business participation with their submission?
I'll let Helen address the incentivizing program, but what we did...
we would always encourage, but we cannot incentivize them because that would be kind of giving them a preference for providing participation, which we're not legally allowed to do so. So we always encourage the participation. And in this case, there wasn't any small business or local business certified that have the technical capabilities required for these services. That's why that's a 0 requirement.
Understood. And so this is a straightforward bid?
Correct.
Understood. Thank you.
Nice that the chair is now present, and we'll take the gavel.
Thank you very much. He is the secretary. So I had no doubt. Thank you so very much. My apologies for being late, and my excuse. Listen, every traffic light kept me from coming.
I understand that.
So, with
Madam
that,
Chair, for the record,
you're still on item B?
Yeah, the record. Do you have a conflict with item B?
No, I don't have any conflicts other than the traffic.
Oh well.
So we have a motion and a second. and some discussion. So I can call the question, or we have any other concerns?
I do have, if I may, Mr. Chairman, one question. Why isn't that there is no incentive to have small business in this contract? You made a comment that it would be illegal. Could you clarify that for the record?
We got a legal opinion that, based on the fact that we're a special district and we don't have the legislative authority, the specific legislative authority to provide a preference for small local or smaller local businesses. So that's why we actually took that out of our policy and took out any kind of incentives, that were allowed within our policies.
So what we would need then to include that again in our future, because
there would have to be a legislative amendment to add the specific authority for this agency to have those preferences.
So, I'm going to follow up on that because I find this interesting now. So, Council, so let me see if I understand this straight. We have been an agency that has advocated strongly for small businesses and local businesses since its inception, correct, Ms. Chairman, I believe, for its fairness assessment? We have legislators. We have elected officials who are obviously have no problem finding issues to legislate on behalf of MDX. If they would legislate and include that, it would be allowable for us to do that. That's something that would benefit our small businesses here for us to continue to do that. In your opinion, Council and Helen, is that what we need?
Yes.
Thank you. That's interesting. So, Mr. Vasquez, I'm sure we can talk more about this during your intergovernmental affairs in the next meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez, you wanted to say something?
No, they answered.
I think it's important to clarify the portion of small and local business participation. I think it's important to, instead of saying that staff recommends, because really staff isn't recommending other than the fact that you're abiding the rules. It's not something that you feel that you would want to do, because this agency and staff all want to help small business and continue to procure and do it that way. But in this case, it's more of, it's a mandate. You can't change the law. You have to abide by the law. So I think we need to reword that, because really it isn't a staff recommendation. It's more of you're following the law. Yes.
To clarify, with any approval to advertise, we always look at how we would be able to meet the goals of the agency. In this particular case, and why we put it the way it is because we did an analysis of the contractors that would be available to meet these goals of the agency, and we didn't find that we would be able to put in a requirement to be able to coincide with our goals. That's why we put in a recommendation of 0% or not including a requirement. In most contracts, we always recommend a requirement. We are allowed to set a requirement. We're just not allowed to do an incentive for participation.
Okay. So, any other questions? Any other concerns? And this particular contract, the way it is now, has no more room for extensions or anything?
Be a 3-year contract with 2 single-year options.
No, for the current vendor.
Oh, we don't. Right now, we don't have a current vendor on board.
Okay.
We've been kind of doing this with our asset maintenance crew, which is why we want to get away from that and have a standalone contract.
And by pulling it out of the contract, there are no penalties or anything?
No, ma'am, no.
Because they're not getting the extra work that they were originally getting?
Correct.
Okay, sounds good. All concerns addressed. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone against? Very good. Motion carries. There's a discussion item. Are you going to be addressing that?
We've got a presentation prepared to update the committee on 2 of the current PD&E projects that we have on 924, Gratigny Parkway.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, and after you finish your presentation, don't leave the podium.
I will
Stay
not.
there.
Okay. So last month we presented the 83618 project, or the Southwest Extension, and we were requested to come back and present on the other 2 PD&Es that we were doing for the 924, the Gratigny, the East Extension and the West Extension. So we wanted to come back and provide those updates. Before we did that, we also want to address one of the questions that was asked last week about why we do the studies before we identify the funding sources that will be available to move forward with these projects. So I started off this presentation just to kind of go over the requirements that we have as an agency as we look into our future projects. And, you know, the PD&E is required to be undertaken by not only MDX, but by all agencies when looking at any improvements to existing or future facilities to make sure that we address environmental and engineering concerns, that we mitigate social, economic, natural, physical, environment impacts. And then we have, you know, we are required to follow the NEPA Act and make sure that we comply with all federal and state laws. And then we, as a part of that process, we analyze all the available alternatives or viable alternatives, including the no-build options that would basically say we don't do anything. So just to give a brief history, in MDX's history, we've undertaken 20 studies. 18 have been implemented. 8 have been construction. 8 are currently either in construction or under procurement, and 4 studies are currently ongoing. And just a little note there, on average, our PD&Es from start to construction have taken an average about 5 years and 4 months. So in comparison with other PD&Es, we're maybe like a year or 2 years ahead of the curve on that. And then obviously we look at all of our future projects, do look at how we connect with all the systems existing in Miami-Dade County. We've actually prepared this map for presentations to show how not only our existing system, but how everything that we're looking at in the future connects to the county's initiatives of moving people through transit. So on the 92404, which is the west extension, in the last work program presentation when we approved the work program in January, we talked about this project, and we said how right now we funded half of the project, which is everything that you see in green on the screen, which is the connections to the west that tie into the turnpike and the portions that are necessary to enhance on 138th Street. We went through the funding slides on that and showed that how we're going to be providing the funding for that, and I have a couple of slides just to refresh us on that. And then the unfunded portions, which is everything that you see in red, which is basically primarily due to the fact that you have the turnpike coming in now with their winding on the turnpike, and we don't want to have any dual efforts on that while the construction is going on. We found that coordination with there was going to be a little bit more difficult than tying into the west for the westbound movement. And then you have I-75 and Palmetto doing their managed lane project. So that envelope right now on the eastern portion of this project really is not viable to go into construction right now. Benefits of the project, as we said, it allows for the connectivity from the HEF to I-75 and 924, be able to connect more traffic from the turnpike all the way to I-95. It completes all the initial improvements of 138th Street, increases capacity by 30%, utilizing that corridor as a major thoroughfare for east-west traffic. And then it also prepares we're also preparing for the northwest expansion and all the development that's happening in that northwest areas of Miami-Dade County. Again, just showing how we analyze the project for inclusion into the work program. We looked at our debt management policies, the toll policy. This project, as was mentioned before, would require a toll rate setting before we go out to the public with an advertisement to make sure that we are meeting the funding requirements. And we have coordinated with local and the local governments, including, as stated, Miami Lakes, which actually issued a resolution in support of these projects. And then the funding finance piece again for these projects. I'm sorry. Okay. It's
planned project for these particular.
Well, again, on the 924, I think
Absolutely.
Let me go back.
Yes.
Where the money is going to be coming from, it's where, and I wish Marie was here to kind of address a little bit more on the finance side, but we're anticipating that we're going to be borrowing 50% against this project. And, there's, what the proposed interest rates, and then the rest will be covered as pay-as-you-go from the revenue that will be generated on the project.
I think the
So-
point.
Once it's done.
Right. I think
Once it's done, correct.
I think the point that you were leading us in the next slide is that in order to finance this project, 50% of it is pay-as-you-go, but the other 50% borrowed requires us to set a toll gantry with a toll rate that then we can borrow against. So, and that's something that when we're done with the presentation, I'd like to discuss a little bit because it'll tie into the next meeting and propose bills that may
Right.
inhibit our opportunities to put in gantries.
Sorry.
Right.
All right, on the 924, total project cost is 130 million. The anticipated construction period is from 2020 to 2023. It does have a new tolling point, and we expect opening year for revenue in 2023 with an anticipated toll rate of 50 cents, and that's how we came up with the numbers that we presented in the previous slide. On the 92408 that we didn't show here, but those are the ramp improvements on 924 at 67th Avenue. That's a $26 million project. Construction year to begin in 2019 through 2021. It's a combination of existing tolls and a new tolling point for a westbound on-ramp. And we are looking at a 2021 opening year with a 50-cent toll on that new movement that goes from 67 to 924 west. So now we have the 92407, which is the east extension to I-95. This project is still in PD&E. In the previous program, what we did was that we funded the design portion, and that was really to keep us in line with the LRTP prioritization requirements, so to keep it as a priority one in the LRTP process. For construction, final design, right-of-way, and construction is unfunded, and we have an estimate of about $616 million for this project, and it, again, unfunded. The benefits of this project would be to alleviate congestion along 119th Street. Right now, where 924 ends on the east end at 32nd Avenue, you come down on 119th Street, and then you got to traverse all that to get to I-95 through signals, and it's a very heavily congested 6-lane facility. It does provide a critical connection for another east-west expressway between the west areas and I-95, especially your commerce traffic. And it would enhance. This project would provide enhancements to the community, it actually would remove a lane from 119th Street, and you have an elevated connection from 924 all the way to I-95. And I'll show you a little snapshot of that in the next. Actually, it was in the previous picture. If you look at the little drawing on the right-hand side, you see what it would look like where 119 is on the bottom, and then 924. The expressway will be on top, and it will be a center median piers, kind of creates almost like a canopy over 119th Street. But in the median, we'd also have an opportunity to create a linear park for that community.
How many lanes on top?
4 lanes on top, 2 lanes in each direction, and then on the bottom, where we just convert to 2 lanes in each direction as well. You'd go from 6 lanes to 4 lanes on the bottom. But remember, now you're taking all the traffic that goes from 924 to I-95 off that surface road, and you're putting it on top, and really what you're doing is opening up 119th Street for the local traffic.
Can you please expand on what those little circles mean?
Those circles are interchanges, the proposed interchanges that we're looking at as part of the PD&E. So you'd have a on-off ramps at where the expressway ends today at 32nd Avenue. You'd have an interchange with on-off ramps at 27th Avenue, and then you have the connection to I-95 to go south.
Have we even, do we know where the tolling points would be?
We have not established that yet, no.
Okay. Do we know that it's more than one?
For this particular road, we're probably looking at 1 tolling point.
Directions.
Yes, for both directions.
Would that be considered 1, or is that considered 2?
We would look at that as 1 toll facility.
Even though it's different directions?
Even though it's different directions, we would look at that as 1 toll facility.
Yes.
On 27, it's not a full interchange. You're not putting people.
It would be slip ramps.
Going west.
No, it would be primarily to get on at 27 to go east, and an off ramp coming coming west. You get off at 27th and you get on to go east. But it wouldn't be. You're right, Steve. It wouldn't be a full interchange.
So by tolling
Okay, but if you read this, it also says that the final design, there's no funding for it. It's unfunded. So in other words, we're going to be a quarter of a way or halfway to the design.
Good.
Haven't finished the PD&E on this. We still have about a year, because this has been a controversial project. There is issues with the community.
But they don't want it?
Well, there's the unincorporated Miami-Dade County North, which is residential primarily, has concerns of any project that would divide their community. The more commercial business on the south see this as an opportunity for redevelopment along North Miami. The reality of this corridor is that people already use it today. It's a 6-lane corridor with on-street parking. They're using it as a connection between I-95 and the Gratigny. And what our traffic modeling has shown is that with the growth of cargo traffic at the Port of Miami, and the fact that you've got the distribution centers and a lot of the warehousing and railroad facilities in the northwest part of the county, this is actually an attraction for heavy truck. So that's one of the comments that we've made in the community meetings. And frankly speaking, I mean, people are, when you look at speed studies along 119th Street, that is heavy, it's fast, and it's already dividing the community. That's why when we started the project, at the time, the elected leaders wanted us to bring this surface street back to a community setting, and that's why we went down to the 4 lanes with the wide sidewalks, with the center median potential for a linear park. It doesn't have to be. They can actually add more space on the sidewalks, but that's part of the process that we're going through with the community.
Yeah, these were the benefits that I discussed. And then the project milestones right now, we did issue notice of proceed in this project in June of 2010. We held the alternative workshop meetings in June of 2011. At that point, we started talking about how we were going to be connecting to, I mean, there was really only one alternative, which is using 119th Street to connect to I-95. We've through that time, we engaged with the state as well as FHWA to get the interchange justification report approved for the connection to I-95. That was somewhat of a more tedious process than we expected, because DOT is going through their analysis of how they're improving I-95, and then you have to make sure that we comply with all the requirements that the FHWA put on us to make sure that whatever we connect, however we connect to I-95 doesn't create any traffic congestion or more traffic congestion that already exists on that facility. So that went through 2 rounds of review with FHWA on how we were connecting, whether it was going to be a 1-lane connection or a 2-lane connection. But we were able to get FHWA approval in February of last year, and now we're moving forward. As Javier said, we've kind of had this project on hold until now. We anticipate to go to public hearing this fall, and then be able to get final consensus by the end of the year on an approved alignment. And then as far as how we would look to fund this project, we're not at that point yet, but I know that was one of the questions that we were asked last meeting. You know, these are the funding options that we would look at. We would look at the tolling point that we would propose on this facility. We would have to do an analysis on what that, do a toll sensitivity study to see how far we push that toll to make sure that people are going to use the facility, and then based on that, we will put together the numbers on how we would do a combined pay-as-you-go financing component, and that's the box on the left. We'd also, both sides really, the box on the left and the middle, maximizing our pay-as-you-go and making sure that we are within our debt requirements and making sure that we can meet all those commitments in the future. And then we'd also look at contractor financing options, P3s, and so forth, to see how we would be able to advance this. And so as we finish the PD&E, we'll go through those levels of analysis. Again, and these, we include the sign because this is basically all the considerations that we would look at to make sure that, and these are all based on the policies that we've set internally here at MDX. So as we continue to look at how we're going to move this project forward, this is everything that we would take into consideration to make sure that we can bring a project that we can build. And
I think the point that we tried to make, board members, and when we have these presentations to the community, is that there is not money sitting out there waiting to build this project. We want to define the project first, make sure that it is publicly accepted. We go through a finance analysis. We'll then have a public meeting just for what the toll rate is, and try to structure the best debt structure for the agency and for the public. What we don't want is to overburden the public with excess debt, borrowing costs. If there's an opportunity for the private sector to participate, we are open to it. That's something that we really have not engaged in the past, but it is an option. Contractors and different groups have come to see us. But again, the money's not free. We have to analyze it and make sure that if we use a contractor or a third party or P3 to finance something, that it fits within our debt structure and that we're not just kicking the can and the debt, overload to the future. So we want to make sure that the benefits and the costs, weigh out. There's a sensitivity to this project because there's history on this project. When the Gratigny was built, it was always planned to connect to 95. The typical section is what the highway would look like, that was proposed through this neighborhood was exactly as the existing Gratigny. So you can imagine what it was going to do to the neighborhood. So there's some sensitivity to government going through and saying, hey, we want to make this connection, but it's going to look different, because there's history and there's sensitivities to that. Most of these big projects that have not moved for many years have a history, typically with the communities.
Mr. Board.
So Juan, go back to the benefits slide, and I just heard the executive director say something that I thought was interesting, which is that we need to balance the benefits and the cost.
Correct.
So I think we do a lot of emphasis on the cost, but I don't see the benefits quantified. I think the words reduces, alleviates are great, but they mean nothing. Because it's impossible to know what reduces does. Is it reduces, so I think that from a presentation perspective, this might be good for a community presentation, but for us to be able to say it makes sense to invest $27 million in enhancing this.
And I apologize that I left those numbers out, but when we presented these projects for the work program, I think what we were anticipating on the 924 East extension is that you would greatly reduce travel times by 30 to 40% by eliminating that necessity to go through 119th Street to get to I-95. So that movement would improve dramatically, and we look to increase capacity by about 30 to 40% as well, because now you're bringing in more people that are going to be able to use that facility as a major east-west corridor. Today, some may get discouraged because really you have, they don't want to get off an expressway. You have the Palmetto to the north. You maybe have State Road 112 further south, but this would create an additional east-west corridor to move commerce, and we that's where we see the capacity picking up.
From reduces to 30 to 40%, there's a step forward, but it still doesn't give enough information. So if we look, the throughput is this is the usage, this is how many people are going to be affected. This is what the 30% benefit means for those 25,000 people a day. And this is the benefit per, for every $1 million, we are affecting these many users, and we anticipate this benefit. I think that allows the board to be able to say, this $120 million project seems to be 4 times, has the impact of 4 times of the $25 million project. And some of these might not be correlated because it's not a beta of 1-to-1. But still, it allows us to be able to understand what you call benefits.
Agreed. And we'll make sure to have that information in future presentations.
Really following up on what Mr. Board said, it's clearly seeing, okay, there's an outcry in the community, but what are they going to gain as the community is getting this expressway coming through, or the growth of this expressway? Because it already is an expressway, but now there's a growth to it that's being elevated and what have not, the other bells and whistles that go along with it. But what are the benefits for the community, and what are the benefits for that moving traffic? And percentages are good. It's the same way when we were confronted with ORT. We can continue collecting cash, and it's 200 cars being put through. Or From that, you go to automation and you use technology, and we're going to what? 1,200, 1,400, 1,500 cars. So, I mean, clearly, I don't have to count the distances, like this, night and day. Yeah. So we need those type of numbers, because as we move forward, I think you've got to come back to reality and what is happening in Tallahassee. As that sets in and gets adopted or voted as it is today, everything that's on the table and everything that we're working on has to change, has to be recalibrated. So you cannot no longer think that this is going to be on the table, because much more important, not even this, not even the HEF, not even any other thing that you have anywhere else, but what you've already committed to. How are you going to be able to finish those with now not putting that major pressure on that toll, that one toll every 5 miles? Because we have, 36 miles of expressway, 40, 54 miles of expressway. We don't have a lot of miles. So 5 miles, okay, and if you consider 2 is 1, let's reconsider how all of that has to be recalibrated. Yes. Because you're not going to have gantries. You're not going to have 25 cents over here. You're not going to have 50 cents over here. What are you going to have for that particular toll that is the toll that's going to be allowed to be able to satisfy your commitments, your debt, okay? And what all these changes mean. So I need for staff to start looking at that before we really go out to market and put people's hope up high. Oh, my God, I'm going to get a wonderful expressway and I'm going to get another connection. Something's changing.
Can you go back, Juan, if I may, through the chair?
Yeah.
Can you go back to the slide that shows the corridor on the east side and then go back to the corridor on the west side? Yeah, on the east side. From 32nd Avenue to I-95 is roughly not even 4 miles. It's three and a little and change. So, House Bill 1049 has a section that says on transportation facilities constructed after July 1st, 2017, there must be a distance of at least 5 miles between toll collection facilities. There was actually a modification to that says you cannot enhance an existing facility. You can't jack up the price on an existing one to meet the intent of this thing. In essence, what they're saying is, if you take the existing gantry that's just west of Lejeune Road and you calculate the distance between that and I-95, we can't put a new gantry. So how do we finance a project like this if we can't put in a new gantry? That's our revenue stream.
Well, that's the point that I'm making, because when you start looking at it, I ride the system. I paid the tolls. Mm-hmm. Okay, I ride the system, and I look at it, and that's a subject that I also want to talk to you about. That's why I asked you to stay at the podium, not just for this, but for something else that I want to introduce today. That 5 miles is going to change everything in the entire system. So you've got to recalibrate the funding that you're going to receive. By what you just said, that also changes how much money or what strain or pressure do you put on that particular toll area. So we've got to look at reality. If this is what the elected officials want, people that vote on it, if this is what they want and this is their mandate, this is something we now need to consider, and we need to, at the appropriate time, if it passes or not, we need to go in and sit back and look at the entire plan and then start changing. But as these studies, go out to the marketplace and meet with people, I think we need to be mindful of what is really happening in today's Florida, today, before we go out to market and talk to the community about this. Because this may not be a reality anytime soon. Not this one, not others that maybe we have. And, I wanted to get a grip on this because I wanted all of us to know what it takes, what kind of funding we would be looking at, because everybody thinks there's a lot of money. Fine, there's a lot of money and they're all connected to each other. And if one drops, that changes everything across the board. So in this case, we need to not work so fast, I would say, on making this right now a movement, because there's something happening in Florida that we need to be mindful, and we can't afford to make empty promises to the community.
Absolutely.
And that's the point where I'm going.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you.
On the west side, Juan, on the west connection, if you look at the existing gantry by 57th Avenue, you do have 5 miles. We could probably put a gantry all the way at the west end next to the heft, if we don't have to consider the turnpike tolls. So that's an interpretive issue. But what it does completely eliminate is the ability to connect at 87th Avenue, which we committed to the town of Miami Lakes to look at, and it completely eliminates the ability to put the 67th Avenue ramps, because you wouldn't be able to introduce new gantries. So those are projects that all have to be relooked at depending on how that legislation moves forward, and that's your point, I think, Madam Chair.
Member Vasquez, did you hear that?
I'm sorry?
So your favorite your favorite projects are in jeopardy here. Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that. I do think there is a lot of speculism at this point in time as to where these bills are going to go and what's going to happen. So I wouldn't suggest we spend a lot of time speculating and looking at these potential changes, because I think when we get into the next committee discussion, I think there's opportunity to help change the language with those bills, if that's something that is still of interest to those legislators, how we modify that and implement it with respect to where or exemptions within those 5 miles. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that basically ends my presentation. I agree with the comments, and we will start looking at those data points for future presentations, because you're right, those are going to be important to really show the impacts, to truly explain what we estimate as the impacts to what these projects could do or not.
On all of them, when you go out to the community, or even to us, when you have those numbers, what does reduce, what does improvements mean, the percentages? How does it change the structure? Do you mean the quality of life because you got there 15 minutes faster, or half an hour faster, or what really does that mean? All the benefits. The benefits are really vital. But I don't want you to leave. No. Are there any questions on this particular presentation? Yeah, don't think I forgot.
No. I'm glued. I'm here.
2 years ago, we adopted a safety initiative.
Yes.
And improvements in all our expressways, using technology, using all the new items available to us. I don't see this happening, and I don't see this happening on 112. When you ride the 112 expressway, okay, and this is all about safety, there isn't a shoulder. If you get a flat tire or you're into an accident, where do you go? Where do you put your car? Because I don't think technology has created flying cars yet. So we need a shoulder. We need shoulders. I don't see the reflectors. I see beautiful plants, beautiful trees, and I see a gantry. I don't see a new paved road. I don't see shoulders. I don't see reflectors. Okay? I think there is an operational deficiency in 112, and I think we need to fast track and move on this immediately. If any, that is an expressway that is used by tourists that are coming in and out, and by Miami-Dade residents that are using it. It's vital, and I believe that it has deficiencies that can be improved immediately. Create shoulders, put in wrong-way signs we adopted this program 2 years ago that we were going to do it. First, it was safety. First, it was a pilot program to do the reflectors. It showed the improvements and how it really enhanced driving when it rains, cloudy days, in the evening. But 112 seems to be the stepchild. So we need to bring it forth as first, the baby that we need to take care of, and especially the shoulders.
Yes.
I need you to come back with a plan for next month, what it will take for us to vote and adopt safety initiatives and improvements to that 112 expressways. These are things and projects that we can do now, not later, not 7 years from now, not 10 years from now, but immediately. These are things that within 1 or 2 years, the community can experience, and the deficiencies can be improved like this. Please come back with a plan.
We will.
Thank you.
Yes.
Madam Chair, would it make sense to do an evaluation of all the structures, to put them on a table and to identify of all the safety procedures that we can perform, which ones have met and which ones have not? So illustrate your point.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Even better, not just for the 112. Let's take a look at the 112, and then let's look at all the others that can also be enhanced now.
We'll look at the entire system. Okay.
That's why I told you not to sit down.
No, I totally agree. We'll put together an update for
Very
next
important
month,
because
and-
safety is number one, and we
we'll
want to
provide
do.
an update on what we did do and where we took the pilot program. But you're absolutely right. We need to continue that, move forward, and we have been looking at how we are going to move that forward.
But instead of in the future, let's not in the future. This is something that we should be doing now,
I agree.
and we can be doing it now.
Yes.
Thank you. Very good. Informational items?
No.
No?
There's a meeting right after this.
All right.
Perfect timing.
I told you I'd make it up to you. Any other questions, concerns, anything you'd like to address? And with that, let's do something since it wasn't done at the beginning. Can you do roll call to make sure?
Ms. Gutierrez? Mr. Wolf? Commissioner Edmondson? Mr. Meyer? Mr. Vasquez? Mr. Walters? Chair Martinez? Vice Chair Fano? Also join us is Mr. Board.
Very good. Thank you. All right. With that, I call the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
All right. Thank you very much.